I'm not the best baker, and I am not the best miller, I'm not the best farmer. All of these things, there are plenty of other people who do it better than I do. Nate Siemens is a better farmer than I am. Nan Keeler from Griston Toll, she's a better miller than I am. There are a million other bakers that are better than I am. But the fact that I am doing it all together, and the fact that I'm taking advantage of all of those different adjustments that I can make for my specific raw materials, I think is one of the things that makes my little project a little bit special and unique, that we can corner and pivot pretty well just based on what the season or the harvest gives us. And then we fashioned our wheat program or our bread program around, at the time, around every single individual variety of wheat that we grew, or excuse me, variety of grain that we grew. So we had a Durum loaf because we were growing Durum, and we had a Sonora loaf because we were growing Sonora, and we had a Red Fife loaf because we were growing Red Fife, and we had an Abruzzi rye. The whole idea, I think, at the time was to make people understand that grain has a taste, a specific taste. Just like you can talk about varieties of apples having different tastes, or the difference between a Eureka lemon and a Meyer lemon, right? You can also talk about the grains having different tastes. And we all know this, I think, as grain growers. And I think all farmers are able to wrap their brains around this, right? Grape growers, they know that Pinot Noir tastes different from Syrah. But for some reason, and for many reasons rather, consumers, this awareness is still very, very new. I think that when we started talking about it in that way, and we started presenting our bread in a way that really highlighted the differences that the farmers see, that became a really great model for education of our consumers. They just thought it was bread, and they just thought it was the baker who made the bread taste good. And for me, one thing that I say every single time I sell at the market is that, no, it's the grain. If you fresh mill the grain, you can really taste a lot of the differences between the different grains. And I said, you can probably taste some of the differences when the flour is aged, but you taste it a lot more when it's fresh milled. One thing that I realized at our farm stand, because we sell out of our bread every single week, I realized that there is an incredible appetite for bread that tastes that tastes different. That became very compelling, not only to the consumers, but also to us in terms of a business model. Because I do think that a lot of people really do want to be taught a little bit more about what they're eating and about where their food comes from, and why the farmers and the other people who are preparing their food or preparing the ingredients for their food, why we make the choices that we do.
When you say that you bake with Durum, that warm my heart, because very few people in the US knows that you can make beautiful loaf of breads with Durum. It's different, right? It's a different type of crop, but in the Mediterranean areas, they use it for baking bread, right?
All the time. And it's so beautiful. It has this really great earthy taste. There is this really wonderful rusticity and depth to the flavor of Durum. It is one of my favorite grains for bread baking. I think it's just incredibly captivating. So, we have a hard time sometimes figuring, not a lot of people actually want to grow it that much for me. It can be hard because I think that A lot of durum is definitely grown for pasta making or not for bread production. And so the production of durum often it's a different channel a lot of the time from a lot of these other grains that we're talking about, these heritage grains that we're talking about, like Sonora and Red Fife and Rouge de Bordeaux. All of these grains are kind of in the same modern bakery language. But durum, the tradition of growing durum is so long. But here in the United States is not necessarily, in terms of bread baking, is not really as common. But pretty much all of my friends who are Italian, who cook Italian food, they really, really are always looking for durum. It's not the easiest. The durum flour, not the semolina flour, but the fine durum flour. It's not the easiest thing for them to find. For people who really love that particular kind of bread, there's no other taste like it. And I think it is the understanding of what the different grains taste like is, at least right now, in many ways kind of an insider's, still not particularly mainstream. People know that it's exciting to bake with heritage grains or heirloom grains or ancient grains, but the understanding of what the taste is still kind of, it's still very new. It's a very exciting time to be baking with individual grains. I think it's a really, really fun thing to do, to be able to see how these different varieties are going to influence your baking and influence your finished product.